Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today I want to talk about classics that I didn't enjoy. I struggled a little bit trying to find a title for this video because the obvious clickbaity YouTube choice would be classics I hate. But honestly, I don't really hate most of the books on this list. Except maybe the very last one I'm going to talk about. Maybe I do a little bit hate that one. But all of the others I was just a little bit disappointed in, or I don't understand why they are such well-loved classics in the first place. There are 5 books on this list. The first book on this list is one that it's really unfair for me to include it on this list because I very clearly did not give it the chance it deserved. And that book is The Stranger by Albert Camus, or as the French like to call it, L'étranger. This book and I met under very difficult circumstances, which is to say, in French lessons in school. So we had to read it in French in my 6th year of learning French at school. And I don't know how I managed to bluff and bullshit my way through the first 5 years of French lessons, but by the time I got to the 6th, I very much could not speak French. So reading a French classic was a bit tricky. And to this day, I cannot give you a summary of the plot. I think someone got shot in the beginning, and then the rest of the book is about. So really, if there's one book on this list that I really should give another try, it's that one. And I will probably read it in translation because, funnily enough, in the 9 years since I graduated high school, my French has not gotten any better. So I'd probably read that in translation as an adult, picking it up voluntarily, and that will make all the difference, I'm sure. The second book on this list is one I read much more recently. I believe I finished it last year, and it is a collection of poems and tales by Edgar Allan Poe. Weirdly, it wasn't the poems that put me off. I quite enjoyed those poems. Poe had a very musical style of writing poetry that I very much enjoyed. But the tales were so dull and so hard to get through. I did not find them creepy, interesting, exciting, funny. They did not incite any emotions whatsoever, and that's kind of bad if a book doesn't even make you care about it. The tales were meant to be, I guess, kind of grotesque adventures, you know, a little bit creepy, a little bit romantic like the poems were, but somehow, I guess Poe's prose wasn't on the nose. Next up is a book that many on BookTube love, from an author that many people love. And that is Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. I read that one earlier this year, and I've since heard that it really isn't the best book to start when it comes to Agatha Christie novels. So I'm sure I will give one of her other stories a try. I'm not completely put off by that book, but I just didn't enjoy reading it. So the setup is pretty much as the title suggests. There is a murder on a train. The train happens to house a detective, Hercule Poirot, a famous Belgian detective, and he attempts to solve the case by looking at the evidence and then interviewing all of the other passengers on this train. And instead of this being a story that you want to read and get to the end to, it is a riddle that Agatha Christie expects you to solve. I am very bad at that, and I gave up after a few chapters trying to figure out who the killer was, and I was just kind of hoping for a good story to follow and a good resolution. But then, when the reveal happens and you actually know what went on and who the killer was, that was just so unbelievable to me that I just did not buy it. I just didn't. It just seemed a bit silly, and not in a good way. On the way to that reveal and that resolution, I was not gripped by any of the characters or their storylines. So Poirot, the detective, he's kind of cute. I like him. I can see myself reading more books with him doing his detecting. But the passengers on the train, I just found them very flat, very two-dimensional, did not care about any of them. And again, that's a bad thing if a book doesn't make you care for the characters. So I was just kind of reading it, trying to get through it, and not finding it particularly interesting at all. The next item on this list breaks my heart just a little bit. I hate having to include this book on here, but I just can't bring myself to like it, and therefore it belongs here. Can you see how I'm procrastinating actually mentioning the title of the book? It's Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. I love all of Jane Austen's books that I've read so far, which is all of them except one, except Mansfield Park. The thing I love about Jane Austen is her main characters, her heroines, are such wonderful characters. And Fanny Price, the main character in Mansfield Park, is not. She is dull. She's boring. She is an empty shell of a person. I'm not saying that every character has to have the sparkling wit of Emma Woodhouse or of Elizabeth Bennet, but you can write a shy character that is not completely boring. Fanny Price is silent throughout most of the book. She just doesn't say anything. She doesn't seem to have any opinions of her own, and her one defining characteristic, as far as I can tell, is that she has good morals and strong principles, but it's just not enough to make me care for her. And then on top of that, I also didn't find the love interest particularly interesting, the setting. The only character that kind of stood out from that book was one of the spinster aunts. I think, was it Mrs. Norris? I liked her, but other than that, the book just didn't hold my attention. And it's so sad because I really do love the other Jane Austen novels, and I know that this one is many people's favourite, and I just don't see why. Sorry, Jane. Then we get to the top item on my list, and that is the one book that I said I might actually a little bit hate. And I know this is a favourite for many. Yeah, it's Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Reading this book made me angry, and that's not a good reaction to have to any book. I hated every single character in this book. I wanted to strangle every single character at one point or another. I didn't care about the romance plot, I didn't care about the gothic elements, I didn't care about the class struggle, I didn't care about the story within a story format of the book, I didn't care about the writing style. By the end of it, I really wanted to throw myself off a Heathcliff. I'm never going to reread that. I am very convinced that this is not the book for me, and I'm so glad that Emily Bronte didn't write another. As far as I'm concerned, the best thing to come out of Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights is the amazing song by Kate Bush. So, bring it on. I know many of the books I talked about here are people's favourites, and I want you to convince me. I want to hear why I'm wrong and you're right. I want to hear what I've missed in all of these stories. I want to hear passionate defences of the books that I've just insulted. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.
Heathcliff, it's me, I've got thee, I've come home, I'm so cold, let me in through your window wall. Heathcliff, it's me, I've got thee, I've come home, I'm so cold, let me in through your window wall.